Mass psychology, how they control you. The great theater of democracy. Imagine you're in a football stadium. The fans on one side shout. The ones on the other side respond. There are chants, flags, emotions running high. Meanwhile, in the VIP boxes, the directors of both clubs are drinking champagne together, laughing at how easy it is to keep people entertained while they divide up the business. This is exactly what happens in modern politics. While you fight on Facebook defending your party as if it were a football team, politicians of all colors are applying the same psychological manipulation techniques that have been known for over a century. They have you exactly where they want you. Emotionally committed but practically inactive. The secret manual everyone uses. In 1895, a French psychologist named Gustave Le Bon wrote The Psychology of Crowds, a book that became the most used manipulation manual in history. Hitler used it. Mussolini studied it. Modern advertisers apply it. And today any self-respecting political consultant has these techniques burned into their memory. Le Bon discovered something fascinating. When people come together in groups, their individual intelligence decreases, but their emotionality multiplies. A person alone can be rational, critical, reflective. That same person in a mass becomes impulsive, suggestible, and extremely manipulable. Modern politicians haven't invented anything new. They've just taken that 130-year-old manual and adapted it to the digital era. Social media has been the greatest blessing for anyone wanting to manipulate masses, because they allow creating instant fans and keeping them constantly agitated. The perfect recipe to control you. Modern political manipulation works like a cooking recipe that never fails. First, they divide you into tribes. It doesn't matter if you're left, right, center, or whatever. What's important is that you feel part of a group and see others as enemies. Once you're in your tribe, every attack on the group feels like a personal attack. Second, they give you external enemies. There's always someone else to blame for everything. Other parties, businessmen, union members, foreigners, the media, those who don't work, those who work too much. The important thing is that you never look up toward those who really make the important decisions. Third, they keep you in a constant emotional state. Indignation, fear, hope, anger, euphoria. Any emotion works as long as it's not cold, critical reflection. Because an emotionally activated person doesn't think, they react. And a person who reacts is predictable, and therefore controllable. Fourth, they give you the illusion of participation. You commented on Facebook, shared a meme, went to a march, voted every 5 years. You've already fulfilled your civic duty. Now you can return to your life while they manage the country however they want. The digital circus where we're all gladiators. Social media is the perfect Roman Colosseum. Every day there's a new battle. A scandal, a controversial statement, a tweet that generates outrage. And you, like a good digital gladiator, grab your virtual sword and go out to fight against other gladiators defending the opposing side. Meanwhile, the emperors, politicians from all parties, are up in the box having fun with the spectacle, because they understand something you haven't grasped yet. While you're fighting with another ordinary citizen like yourself, you're not questioning their privileges, their salaries, their special pensions, their allowances, their reserved expenses. It's the most brilliant strategy that exists. Converting the people's political energy into free entertainment. Every time you argue on social media with someone from the opposing party, you're doing exactly what they want you to do. You're spending your political energy on something that doesn't affect them at all. The partisan identity trap. They've convinced you that your political party is part of your personal identity. Criticizing your party is like criticizing yourself. Changing your opinion about your party is treason. Recognizing that the opposing party is right about something is weakness. This partisan identity works exactly like football fanaticism, but with much more serious consequences. A football fan can be fanatical without affecting the country's public policies. A political fanatic is actively contributing to keeping the political system unchanged. Because when your identity is tied to a party, you can't see that all parties are part of the same system. You can't recognize that the politician from your party, who has been living off the state for 30 years, is as much of a parasite as the one from the opposing party. You can't accept that maybe the problem isn't who wins elections, but how the entire system is designed. The good guys versus bad guys game. There's always a simple narrative that divides the world in two. We are the good guys, they are the bad guys. We want what's best for the country, they only seek power. We represent the people, they represent the elites. Or vice versa, depending on which side you're on. This Manichaean narrative is fundamental to keeping the system functioning, because it prevents you from seeing that reality is much more complex. It prevents you from seeing that maybe the politician from your party who promises changes is the same one who has been decades without changing anything. It prevents you from seeing that maybe the problem isn't the people, but the rules of the game that allow any person to become corrupt once they reach power. The division between good and bad also prevents you from allying with people who, although they vote differently, share your basic frustrations. That politicians earn too much, that they don't account for their actions, that they promise one thing and do another. That alliance would be dangerous for the system, which is why they make sure it never happens. The perfect escape valve. Social media serves a brilliant psychological function. They give you the feeling that you're doing political activism when in reality you're doing emotional catharsis. You write an indignant comment, share a meme, argue with a stranger, and you already feel better. You've already discharged your political anger. It's like having an escape valve that releases just enough pressure so the system doesn't explode, but not enough to generate real changes. It's placebo activism. It makes you feel like you're doing something, but it has no real effect on power. While you're discharging your political energy in Facebook debates, you're not organizing to demand concrete changes. You're not collecting signatures for a plebiscite. You're not pressuring for constitutional changes. You're not creating citizen movements that really make the established power uncomfortable. Fear as a control tool. There's always something terrible that can happen if you don't vote for the right candidate. If the other one wins, dictatorship is coming, or communism, or fascism, or economic crisis, or foreign invasion. Fear is the most efficient fuel for mobilizing masses because it nullifies critical thinking. A scared person doesn't evaluate pros and cons, doesn't analyze proposals, doesn't demand detailed explanations. A scared person votes for whoever promises to protect them from danger, without wondering if that danger is real, or if the one promising protection can or wants to do it. Fear also justifies anything. If there's an existential threat, then any measure is justified. Any alliance, any contradiction, any broken promise can be explained by saying, it was necessary to avoid something worse. The illusion of change. Every election they sell you the story that this time it's going to be different. New candidates, new proposals, new hope. But the basic structures of the system never change. Politicians' salaries remain the same. Privileges remain intact. The rules of the game continue favoring the same people. They've convinced you that political change means changing the people who occupy positions, not changing the rules that regulate those positions. It's like believing you're going to improve a football team by changing players, but keeping an incompetent coach and corrupt management. Real change would be constitutionally modifying the system, lowering legislators' salaries, eliminating special pensions, putting limits on terms, creating real accountability mechanisms. But those changes require real citizen organization, not partisan emotions. The power of emotions over reason. Political manipulators know that human decisions are much more emotional than rational. No matter how much data you show someone, if that data contradicts their emotional narrative, they'll reject the data and maintain the narrative. That's why modern political campaigns are designed like emotional roller coasters. Every day there's a new drama, a new outrage, a new hope. They keep you in a state of constant emotional activation because they know an emotionally activated person doesn't think critically. It's much easier to generate an emotional reaction than to build a rational argument. It's much faster to make someone outraged with a meme than to explain the details of a political proposal. And outrage goes viral. Rational arguments don't. The professionalization of manipulation. Today there's an entire industry dedicated exclusively to manipulating your political opinion. Communication consultants, social media specialists, political psychologists, big data analysts. All working to find exactly which emotional buttons to press to make you do what they want. These professionals know more about your psychology than you know yourself. They analyze your likes, your shares, your comments, the times you're active, the words you use, the emotions you express. They create detailed psychological profiles and design messages specifically calibrated to manipulate your reactions. It's an asymmetric psychological war where they have all the professional tools, and you only have your intuition. It's like fighting a modern army with stones and sticks. The only real defense is understanding how the game works. The myth of democratic participation. They've convinced you that participating in democracy means voting every 5 years and giving opinions on social media. That's the most basic and least effective version of democratic participation that exists. It's like believing that participating in a company means choosing the CEO every 5 years, but having no voice in daily decisions. Real democracy includes tools like plebiscites, referendums, public hearings, participatory budgets, recall of mandates. Tools that allow you to directly influence specific decisions without needing partisan intermediaries. But curiously, those tools aren't promoted much, because those tools do represent a real threat to the political establishment. A plebiscite to lower legislators' salaries can't be stopped by any party, because it goes directly to the people. That's why they prefer you channel your political energy through them, as indispensable intermediaries. False polarization. Current political polarization is not organic, it's manufactured. The extremes feed each other because both need a clear enemy to justify their existence. The ultra-left needs the ultra-right to prove the fascist threat is real. The ultra-right needs the ultra-left to prove the communist threat is real. Meanwhile, most people are in the middle, simply wanting things to work better. But that moderate majority doesn't generate strong emotions, doesn't viralize content, doesn't donate money to campaigns, doesn't go to marches. That's why extremes dominate public discourse, even though they represent minorities. This artificial polarization serves a very specific function. It prevents people from uniting around concrete objectives that transcend partisan divisions. It prevents a left-wing voter and a right-wing one from realizing they're both fed up with politicians living so well while they struggle every day, capturing discontent. Any genuine protest movement is quickly captured by some political party that converts it into fuel for their own machinery. Citizen discontent never remains independent. It's always co-opted and redirected toward traditional partisan channels. It's as if there were a political immune system that detects any real threat to the status quo and neutralizes it by absorbing the most dangerous elements. Movement leaders receive offers they can't refuse. Demands are diluted into vague promises. Transformative energy is channeled toward electoral objectives. That's why real changes never come from social movements that end up allying with political parties. The only changes that last are those institutionalized through constitutional mechanisms that can't be reversed by the next government. The algorithm of division. Digital platforms are designed to maximize the time you spend connected, and they've discovered that the content that generates the most engagement is that which provokes strong emotions. Outrage, fear, anger, euphoria. That's why the algorithm preferentially shows you divisive political content. It's no coincidence that you're increasingly outraged by politics and increasingly understand less what's really happening. The algorithm is training you to be more emotional and less rational, because irrationality is more profitable. An outraged person clicks more than a reflective person. This creates confirmation bubbles where each person only sees information that confirms what they already believe. There's no real debate, no exchange of ideas, no possibility of changing opinions. There's only constant reinforcement of one's own beliefs and demonization of those who think differently. The outrage industry. There's an entire economy based on keeping you outraged. Media outlets that live on generating clicks with scandalous headlines. Influencers who build audiences by feeding anger. Politicians who become famous by being increasingly extreme in their statements. All these actors have a direct economic incentive to keep you emotionally activated. Tranquility doesn't sell, reflection doesn't go viral, moderation doesn't generate followers. The business model of modern politics is based on constant polarization. That's why every day there's a new controversy, a new scandal, a new reason to be outraged. It's not that there's more corruption than before, it's that there are more economic incentives to show it dramatically. And while you're focused on the drama, you're not focused on solutions. The way out of the labyrinth. The only way to get out of this manipulation labyrinth is to recognize that you're inside it. To understand that your political emotions are being deliberately manipulated by professionals who know exactly which buttons to press. The first step is to emotionally disconnect from partisan politics. This doesn't mean being apathetic, it means being strategic. It means asking yourself, is this outrage I feel generating any real change? Or is it just making me feel good? The second step is to focus on specific structural changes that transcend partisan divisions. Changes that improve the system regardless of who's in power. Constitutional limits on political power, accountability mechanisms, mandatory transparency, real democratization of decisions. The third step is to organize with other citizens around those specific objectives, regardless of their partisan preferences. Because at the end of the day, a left-wing voter and a right-wing one have more in common with each other than either of them has with the professional politicians of their own parties. Real democracy begins when you stop being a fan. Democracy is not a sport where you have to choose a team and defend it blindly. Democracy is a tool to improve your life and your community's life. But for it to function as a tool, you first have to stop using it as an identity. When you stop being a fan of a political party and start being a critical user of the democratic system, that's when you start representing a real threat to those who benefit from the current chaos. Because a citizen who thinks instead of reacting is unpredictable, and therefore uncontrollable. And when enough citizens become uncontrollable, that's when real changes will begin. Because in the end, all the psychological sophistication in the world can't stand against a critical mass of people who decided to think for themselves and act accordingly. The question isn't whether you can escape manipulation. The question is whether you want to. Because escaping requires effort, requires discomfort, requires giving up the emotional satisfaction of fanaticism. But that's the price of real freedom. The freedom to think for yourself instead of letting others think for you.